to like.
Okay, so I'm just gonna start recording.
Yeah.
Now
Texas is good, man.
That's what
I'm an open book. I don't really care. so it's all good.
I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited. I have a good friend of mine, Teisa. She's here with me to talk about what she's learned as a new teacher and also as a coach. How you doing, Teisa?
I'm doing awesome. Nothing to complain about.
Nice. Awesome. I'm super excited to have you here with me today. Teisa and I met a while ago. We won't talk about how many years ago, but I first met her sister, who's also super awesome and amazing educator and coach as well. And so I've been fortunate to also get to know Teisa and be good friends. And so Teisa, we've been talking about how it can help new teachers or even new coaches. So share with us a little bit about how you became a teacher.
Awesome. So I'm glad you talked about my sister. I actually became a teacher because of my sister. So I look up to my sister a lot.
Me too.
And I finished college at the University of Hawaii, and I actually was pursuing dental school. And I was applying to a bunch of dental schools. I was taking the DAT, which is the entrance. Right. Test.
Okay, this is all coming.
You're remembering now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would visit you and Wheela at the school here and there while I was in college, and then I finished college, and I was getting ready to go to dental school. I got married, and then I actually found out I was pregnant while I was applying to all of these dental schools, and I was looking at Oregon, Arizona, Washington.
Yeah.
Some in Texas too. So I ended up not going to dental school because my sister said, hey, while you're waiting, why don't you come and, do like part-time teaching at the school. And then she got called to be the high school head coach of the varsity team, the girls varsity team. So I said, okay. And so she said, coach with me and then come and teach. I know the principals very well, and I can get you a job. So I took my first semester, and that's when I worked with you. We worked together in my first semester, and we worked with, some troubled kids, a lot of at-risk kids, and then I coached with my sister. So I ended up liking it a lot, and I think that I never went to teaching school. I never learned about, just pedagogy or teaching and all of that stuff that you need to know, like to when you go into teaching, right?
Yeah, same.
I just kind of got thrown in there.
Right, but I feel like you're a natural. I feel like there are so many who are, they say, called to teaching, right? And there are gifts that you have of working with youth and just your own personal experiences and even your character. And in all fairness, the principal knew you and the family, that you were already amazing. So of course, she would want you to come and bring all of that amazingness to the school and to the kids. So she was really a great administrator in that way. I feel like she would mention after I had worked there about how as a principal, you're constantly looking for talented people to recruit them into teaching, even though they didn't necessarily go to school for teaching. And I think that that's really smart.
Yeah. So she that principal, she actually recruited me. My sister recruited me because she knew that like I would help her on the volleyball court too, right? And it was literally five minutes away. So I literally like rolled out of bed, got ready, and then was at school like in an instant. And so I loved it. And I could go home at lunch. And so I was like, okay, this is cool. And I ended up really liking it. So, because kind of like what you said, I did feel like it was my calling, like at that time, like it was like, I feel like I was meant to be a teacher and a coach. So, when you feel like you're fulfilling a purpose, you know, you feel great about it, you know,
Definitely.
and then you love going to work,
Mhm.
and you love doing what you do because you feel a purpose, you feel like you're making an impact in people's lives, and you feel great about yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And then when you actually have skills to do the job, you know, it kind of is a confidence booster. You're like, okay, I think I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right place. I feel good about the service and the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, the rest was history. I pretty much just ended up teaching, stayed there, and I taught at our school in Hawaii for 3 years. And then I decided to move to Texas, and then continued my career in teaching and coaching here in Texas, and loved it. But
Nice.
that's how I started. Was I got recruited, I guess, and God kind of led me to this job, this profession.
Yeah. Same. Lisa recruited me. Wheela did too. She had a role in it as well. And absolutely, God definitely guides our path, which is so powerful.
So that's cool. I'm glad that we could stop and take a look, and then you're like, okay, I need to stop moving my mouth so much.
Oh my gosh. I'm noticing about how I say that's awesome. Like how many times I'm thinking, I need to think of other words, but it's like what comes to my mind. But I also think about how, as a teacher,
Yeah.
I find like when I'm in front of my students, I don't know, it's like you put on this hat and you're like, go time. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're in a
Right.
zone and you're doing your thing and you're with your students and you're giving your
Yeah.
lesson, versus like when you're not around them and you're just around family, you know, it's a little different mentality. But I loved working with you and Wheela, you know, a nonprofit, and just working with student athletes and everything. I mean, it was such great synergy, you know, with all of us and Daniel. And man, that I have to say, professionally, I've never worked with such a strong, cohesive team like that. I mean, I've met some wonderful people, but I mean, to have a team where we're so in sync, it was so powerful. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. You can look back and be like, man, that was a good time.
So tell me about the coaching. Like, how was that, teaching for the first time and coaching? What was life like for you?
So I would say it was also kind of getting thrown in the fire because, you know, and
Yeah.
this is some good just insight for new coaches, because I played volleyball all throughout my life, and then I played at a very high level, but it doesn't mean that,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
but it doesn't mean that you will just automatically be a good coach, you know.
Yeah.
So I learned tons in my first year of coaching, you know.
Yeah.
So
What was
the
your main
coaching,
takeaway? Like when you look
so
back on that year, you're like, man, this was valuable.
yeah, I think there's probably like a dozen main takeaways, but I guess one that pops out is the one that, and you know, you just gotta learn these things through experience.
Yeah.
I feel like you could give the advice, and then it's not until you go through it and then you do the same mistake that you're just like, okay, that's what they were telling me,
Yes.
you know?
Yep.
So, but, you know, again, you're going to at least try to apply the tips that a veteran teacher tries to share with you as a new teacher. But nobody told me anything about teaching or coaching, you know, like I didn't get it. So this is awesome that you have this channel, but they didn't really kind of give me any insight, like how it was going to be, what pitfalls to look for, what challenges you're going to face, how to approach your coworkers, how to approach the kids, some of the common mistakes that happen in teaching, in the teaching world, that you want to make sure you handle it properly, you know. And it's just kind of like, oh my gosh. And so as they're happening, you're just like, you just respond the best way that you know how.
Yeah.
And then you're just kind of like, man, looking back at it, you're like, I really wish I had a second to think about it, then I probably would have done differently. And a lot of things that happen in the teaching world and coaching world is emotional. I'm
Mm,
gonna 100% say that for everyone,
yeah.
because who in the world goes to teach for free? You know, like every person that goes to teach is trying to make a difference in the world.
Yes.
I know that 100%. There's
Yeah.
not one teacher that goes into teaching without having that in their heart and in their mind,
I
you
agree.
know, and then somehow along the way, they lose the spark, they lose the desire, the motivation to change the world, you know, and for some odd reason, they just, you know, fizzle out and then they just kind of go through the motion and stuff, right? But I can say that that's why it's so emotional, because you're in there wanting to make a difference and you take things personally. So I think that's the
Absolutely.
yeah, that's the one big takeaway I take from my first year in coaching. In teaching, it wasn't so bad because you know, you're kind of in your own domain in your classroom.
But
And
it's not as public as
mhm,
coaching, where you've got
right,
parents watching, or it's even
mhm,
being televised or broadcast. Yeah.
right. And then you have to work with a team of coaches, you know. You do in teaching for sure, but then you always come back to your classroom and you're just like, you drop whatever happened, you know, in the faculty meeting or in the goal team meeting. You just like, okay, whatever. And you get to your classroom and you do your thing, right?
Yes.
Nobody has control over that. Well, in coaching, it's a little bit more emotional because you have to deal with your fellow coaches and you have to make some serious decisions that you can't make by yourself. You have to make it with the other coaches' feedback. And so for me, I'm a dominant person. So I don't like to be in the passenger seat. I like to be driving. Like that's where I feel comfortable, you know? And
Yeah.
so my first year coaching as an assistant coach to my sister, you know, that's older than
That's a
me.
different dynamic for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And I'm usually in any situation or room, like I just gravitate to to the leadership role. And
Mm.
I'm just kind of like, hey, this is how we're gonna do it. And let's go, you know. And that didn't go well my first year. Like I feel like
Well, you got two chiefs, right?
yeah, yeah,
Mentality. And
right,
yeah,
right.
you just naturally butt heads.
Right. And because we're sisters too. So, and
Yeah.
it's nothing against my sister. I'm kind of glad it was my sister, because if it was somebody else that was kind of like a dominant person, you know, it would have been way more crazy. But that's what I learned is like, hey, you have to understand roles in teaching and in coaching.
Mhm.
And a lot of times going into a situation, you really don't know what your role is going to be.
Okay.
Even though they identify it and say like, hey, you're in charge of the blockers and you're in charge of defense, you know, and sometimes they don't even tell you like what you're in charge of. They just kind of like expect you to kind of like jump in and take ownership of these jobs, right? And anyways, you kind of like, there's some guessing in there and then there's some telling, and then really it's like you work together to, it's a business. You work together to figure out whose talents are actually for that role. And then along the way, it's just kind of like, yeah, she can't do that, or it's not a good dynamic. So we have to switch that coach or that player to this or that, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a coach that's very like a go-getter, demanding, and like just
Mm.
doesn't want to wait for anybody to get the job done, you know, that's a great thing. But if you don't have an understanding of how you fit in the bigger picture, it's gonna be tough,
Yeah.
So that's one big takeaway, is because Coach Kavika was our strength conditioning coach. He came in and did strength and conditioning. And I, love strength and conditioning. So of course I had input, right? And but then I realized, like, looking back at my very first season coaching, was like, that was not my role. My role was to run practice drills to help with this or that, and then, Coach Leela, she was a very big social coach. She liked to have team bonding activities. She wanted to make sure that the girls were on top of it with their schoolwork. She wanted to make sure that she had a relationship with all of their teachers and that they were all on top of their grades. She got along with all of the other coaches, like the opponent coaches, like just a lot of like social stuff. And so she was really like the coach that was the friend of the players. They all loved her. And I think that's how it should be in high school. But so my mindset was just kind of like, it was just different. My mindset was that, the head coach doesn't have fun. And,
right. Like, no, people hate the head coach.
Right. Yes.
They make your life miserable.
Right.
That's their role.
Yeah. So it was the exact opposite. Like they all hated me because I was always like telling them, hey guys, what's going on? Like, we need to be getting ready for our game. Why are you guys out here like pulling pranks? No, get your shoes on. Warm up is in 5 minutes. As a matter of fact, right now, get outside, and I'm always just kind of putting everybody before games. Coach Wheela's like pulling pranks with all the girls, and so I'm just kind of like, what is on here? Do you have your lineup? Like all this stuff, you have everything ready? And she's just like, no, don't worry about it. I got it, And so my learning experience was just like, I had to learn how to follow, even though I thought I knew better and I could have done better. You have a role to play in a team, and you just got to roll. You got to understand your role. Then you have to accept it, and you have to play that role. And that's how it goes in the coaching world. That's really how it goes. And if you can't do that, you're going to have a miserable time being a coach. If you don't understand that you're the assistant coach, you're in charge of this or that, or if you're the head coach, it's miserable too, because you got to show up an hour early, you got to leave an hour late, you got to have everything ready, all the equipment set up. If we're doing scouting, the camera, if we're going to a game, you got to get the balls, you got to get ball carts, you got to get the lineup sheets, you got to get all the paperwork, you got to make sure like all the girls have their jersey. It's a lot as a head coach. And if you don't know how to manage all of that and play that role very well, then you need to understand, okay, what personnel do I have and how can I delegate these things, right? And then you got to make sure that these people understand their role and do their role properly, because feelings get hurt when they feel like, hey, I'm really good at this and I should be doing this. I want to do this and I know how to do this better than you, blah, blah, blah. That's how I was. But it's really not about like your feelings and your wants and your desires. It's about like the overarching team goal. And what do you need to specifically do to help the team get there?
Yeah.
You got to do that well and forget about everything else you want to do.
Right. Oh, I love that. I think that that's some really excellent insight. And I feel, so as you were talking about that, I was thinking about, as a teacher, because I feel like students don't make that connection of why teachers make decisions in their classroom to do certain activities or to teach them certain skills. It kind of goes over their head, especially when it comes to doing projects. Where the students are learning those kinds of skills where you have to work with other kids that maybe you don't like, or you don't think are as smart or are lazy or whatever, because you see that all the time with kids where they, start to get kind of petty and they don't want to work with so-and-so and they want to work with their friends. And I feel like that is a real life skill that they will apply in their life. Whether or not they become a coach is not the point. The point is they will someday have a job, and they need to be able to get along with their coworkers. They need to be able to work as a team, communicate, and like you said, know your role. So I think that that's really powerful. Now, looking back, if what is there a specific experience, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at that time, but just overall in coaching where you had to overcome a situation that was difficult that you hadn't experienced before, and how did you do that?
Oh, that's kind of a tough question, because I feel like on the daily, I was I was meeting challenges. But I guess one thing that really sticks out to me in my teaching and coaching career was surrounding yourself with good influences. And I had to tell myself that, like, I had a choice of what teachers or what people I could be around, because sometimes, like for a while when I was teaching, there was a teacher and a teacher coach. And, I don't have anything bad to say about her character, but it just, she had this tendency to just complain all the time, and
I like that. You're all super positive people. I mean, honestly, I was telling my husband, I don't think I've ever heard you guys really say anything negative. Like, that's just not you guys. That's not you. I mean, I know you make observations, which I think is different from just like complaining and whining.
Yeah. So me personally, it didn't sit right with me. And it was like day in and day out, because she was actually my boss. She was our coordinator. And, she's a great person, but it just every day in the office and then every day out in the field, we would do conditioning with the girls. And then in the classroom, she was also in my goal team. And we both taught science, but I just my insight and my learned lesson is I guess just choose to stand up for yourself, and your quality of life and your welfare. So I feel like some teachers just kind of put up with their environment, and they just allow them to stay in a situation that doesn't make them happy, Yeah. And so day in and day out, like for a very long time, I would be around this teacher, and it bothered me. It bothered me because we're literally from like 6 a.m, we have to bring the girls and we have to condition them. Then we're in the gym for another, couple hours. And then we go to teacher classes, and then we eat lunch around each other and this or that. But like, yeah, I
so
kind of just, a lot, like, I was just like, there's nowhere to hide from this person. Like, she's in all of my groups. And then I guess I didn't handle it well. So to answer your question, like, is there a difficult situation that you had, and how did you handle it? Well, I just forced myself to stay in that situation, and I didn't address it and tell her, And I think looking back at it, I would just, every time she would come around and then start complaining, I would literally my morale would just oh. And then I would slowly try to walk away and go to another area that, I could be at without hearing, her complain. And I just kind of just removed myself and kept removing myself, but it didn't ever leave because we were in the coach's office, we were in the girls' room changing, getting
You're
ready
like
for
trash,
games.
right?
We were at games.
Ask them.
Yes. We were in the science room together. We're sharing a lab. Like it was constant. And then, so I kind of just told myself, here's what I actually did was I ended up, I was teaching at the junior high and I finally decided to move up, and I went to the high school and I taught there. So I only taught a few years at the junior high and then I went to the high school. And my big motivation was to get away from this challenge that I felt like I was in a negative environment.
Yes.
And when I look back at it, I should have just had a hard conversation with her. It was a big conversation. Like in some instances, you can actually remove yourself and never ever be around there. Right. But I should have had a conversation with her and just said, hey, like it bothers me. And I literally am down every day because I'm constantly listening to your sad stories and everything that's going wrong in the world and in your life.
You're bringing
and I was
me
just
down,
like,
man. You're
bringing me down. And I was just like, I just can't, I can't. So I literally, yeah. So that's one thing that sticks out to me that wasn't just it wasn't a very good time. I loved coaching. When me and my girls would get out, we'd do our drills and then we'd win some games, lose some games, we'd laugh and cry. It was awesome. But I couldn't confront a boss, and it's tough. But you know what? I could have had that hard decision, but I think I also did stand up for myself by moving schools. So when I moved schools, I was so happy. I was so happy. Every day I worked with people that loved to be there and had a great outlook on teaching and on life. And they weren't perfect, but we were all in it together. We had each other's back. And I loved passing by them, sharing equipment, sharing rooms, sharing ideas, and just loved having great coworkers, that's something that I feel like, you want to try to achieve as a teacher. And if it's not happening, you got to figure out something to do. You got to talk to your principal, you got to talk to your lead teacher and just say, hey, if you're honestly trying your best, you want to do what's best for the team, stand up to yourself and for yourself and confront people in a professional manner, and just say, and with love, hey, dude, I'm not perfect and I love what I do. I know you love what you do, but I'm just saying I would really like for this or that, if we could work together. And I think when you approach people like that, they'll be like, oh, wow, okay, she cared about me enough to confront me to my face. Right. And then secondly, her approach was not in a negative way, pointing the finger and you have to do this or that. And then if you can also provide solutions or what you can do to help the situation, then it's not okay, you do everything because this is not working. I don't like how you do this or that. You're going to face this all the time where teachers do these things and just gets on your nerves, and you're just dude, she keeps locking the door to the printer. What in the heck? And every time I come here, it's the door's locked and I can't get into the print, and then whatever. It's just whatever it is, that's your life. And so I feel like being a teacher is tough because you're with all of these other people that's trying to save the world. and
they're not perfect, right? So because in another video I talked about how nobody told me that there was going to be drama amongst the teachers, right? They all of these little things that sometimes you get stuck in the middle of. And so I feel like what you just said, that is absolutely true, that in your career, you are going to have to work with somebody that's difficult, and then how do you deal with that? And I feel like with my first year, I was grateful that Wheela was there. And so she was somebody that was like, well, as a really good friend, but also as a soundboard that I could go to and be like, this is going on. I don't know what to do. And, and she gave really great advice. But that sounds like a really tough situation that you're in. I'm glad that it worked out in the long run for you, that you were much happier. Because in a previous video, I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember when that department chair broke into my class and was like, why were you hired and put in this position? Oh my gosh. So that was something that I shared about. So if you saw my previous video, Teisa is the friend that was in the classroom that witnessed that department chair walking in telling me that she didn't think that I should be teaching seniors. I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah.
And then she left. And I didn't really, I don't know if you remember, I think you and I were both looking at each other like in shock.
Right.
Did that just happen? And then the next class started, so I couldn't really deal with it, but.
Yeah. And then you just kind of had to like roll with it.
I was upset. Like, I was upset
to
do that in front of my students. I thought it was so rude and unprofessional. And then of course, then when lunch came and I got on the phone talking to my mom, and I was praying because I was like, Lord, please help me deal with this crazy lunatic busting into my classroom. Like, that was so uncalled for. And I knew I had a department meeting like the next day, and I was gonna have to see her again. And I was like, please don't let me,
yes,
please don't let me say anything. But I was really upset. And then she ended up apologizing. But
yeah. See, it's tough. People aren't perfect and they do some stupid things, and you got to learn how to handle it.
You have to learn how to handle it.
Crazy things happen in the teaching world.
And nobody knows. It's all behind closed doors.
Right.
That people don't see. But
am I talking too
long? I feel like, you just go with what you feel. Say what's in your heart. I mean, it's gonna carry through to whoever watches.
Yeah, but it's been an honor. Thank you, Dee.
Thanks, Teisa. You're so nice. I mean, I don't know, I'm just rolling with what I feel to do, and and hope that, like my husband was saying, he's like, well, you just put the video out there and somebody's gonna watch it. Somebody's gonna take away something positive that will help them, because like we've talked about how I didn't have this when I was started teaching, right? Kind of.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the population that become teachers are people that never were going to be teachers.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I have seen that. Their track is going in one direction, or they got a degree in something and then they feel to go into teaching. I mean, same with me. I emergency hire, right? So I had my undergrad in political science and went into teaching without having that training, right, about lesson plans and standards and pedagogy and all of that. And so I've thought a lot about that, how different my teaching experience would have been had I had that versus what I ended up doing. And I feel, for my personality, I feel like how I went into teaching was what was best for me. I think it worked out better for me because I feel like in my degree, political science, right, it's all about identifying problems in society and then how do you solve it. And then my own personality, right, it's all about problem solving. How can you help them learn this and feel good about themselves and acquire those skills. Versus when I did my graduate program, I feel like I didn't really learn anything in my graduate program that I didn't figure out on my own. So I always tell them, like, man, I feel like that was wasted money in some ways, but you have to have that degree, right, to qualify for the steps. But
yeah. And then it's just kind of like, well, you're going to actually learn more when you finally apply it.
Definitely. I mean, if anything, I just had the terminology identify for what I was already doing. But other than that, I didn't. Oh, and I gained relationships, learning from other people. But really, teaching is one of those things, probably like other things, where you just have to dive in and then learn as you go and then improve.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Somebody just asked me recently and they're like, do you miss teaching? Do you want to go back to teaching?
Yeah.
And Charlie like right away answered for me. And I'm like looking at Charlie like, he's like, oh no, she's not going back to teaching. No way. And then I looked at him and I was like, okay. But just because, no, but it's because he would have to hear everything I would come home to.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I have to give props to spouses of teachers, because they experience what we experience.
But it's just a little bit different because they hear us and they see us, like all of like the emotion and us being all worked up, and they're like, whoa, like, wow, are you okay? You know, I'll be worked up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this teacher did this and this and this, or this coach, and like, I can't believe it. Or this kid, totally
He's killing me.
Right, sabotaged my lesson that I prepared today, and I'm like in tears, you know, because I'm just like, I worked so hard to plan the lesson, and then he comes out and he just ruins the lesson, the kid, you know. And then I had to get an argument with him and send him to the principal's office and blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh, it's like all coming back to me. And Charlie's like, oh my gosh. And he would have to hear me. Week in and week out of me, like just telling him about all of these challenges that I faced in the week. And he's just like, wow, your principal did that? Or, oh, your coworker is like that? And I'm like, yes, can you believe her? Every day she becomes like whatever, you know, like, and then I'm just like, oh, I just can't help, just so annoying. And then he also gets to hear all the good stuff, right? But it's kind of like, you know, most of the bad stuff is the stuff that you go home to tell your spouse, because like you just need a vent. So anyways, Charlie like quickly answered for me, and she's like, oh no, she's not going back to teaching. She's good. We're good. She's working from home and she homeschools Kingston now. And so all of the teaching skills that I learned, I'm now using at home with Kingston. And now it's a different chapter and different lessons. And I'm just learning like, oh man, you know, you think it's easier when it's one-on-one, but it's not. It's because it's your own child. It's your own child, you know. And they like, it's just different. But yeah. So I actually, you know, look back at my teaching and I've learned so much. But I'm like, you know, I've hung up my shoes and I'm not walking down that path ever again. But I most definitely have some battle scars and some experience to like help me in my future, and that has helped me, you know, currently in all the things that I do as a mom and as a business owner. So I'm like,
you have all those skills that you've been able to translate it over into something that you're passionate about.
Right.
Awesome. I love that. You reminded me of how, like, the role of the spouse, right? What they go through that emotional roller coaster with you, the ups, the downs, the stories. They hear all the stories. They know about your coworkers, your students. They well, like, he'll help me with laminating and cutting and, you know, later. And it's funny because I'll come home and like he'll tell me, man, you look exhausted, right? Helping me with my stuff. Because you're just on go, right? And you're giving all your energy to your students, and then you come home and it's like, oh.
Yeah, you don't even get to use the bathroom. You don't even get to eat sometimes. And like at the end of the day, I'm like running to the restroom and I'm like almost about to pee in my pants. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't freaking use the bathroom for 7 hours. Like,
And that's
dude.
something nobody knows. I shared that in a previous video of things that nobody told me, and that was one of them, about how nobody tells you you're not going to be able to use the bathroom.
You're not.
Because 5 minutes for the kids in transition, that's not enough time for you to run down and come back.
But because you got stuff to do in the transition, you gotta like put stuff away, put the new PowerPoint up, and blah blah blah, send an email, take a call, like, and then it's boom, the next class is there, and you gotta be ready to rock and roll. So it's just so funny, all these teams, like, yeah, and then you're like starving, but you're just like, you have this short lunch hour,
right?
And
you
you're
might
just
be making
like
copies and then trying to scarf down your lunch while you wait in line for the copy machine.
Right. Or you're just doing so much, and then like you forgot that you didn't eat or whatever, and then by the end of the day, you're just like, give me anything to put in my I need to, like, I'm hungry. I'm like, it's crazy, but like, it's just like, you just have to be a teacher to know, like, it's crazy what we go through.
Right. And you still love it though. You love it. You love the kids, and you get up every day and you do it again.
Right. Oh, good times.
Thanks, Teisa. If you had to give yourself advice, or even if Kingston were looking to be a teacher, what advice would you give?
I would say have fun. I would definitely say, hey, make it a priority that you're going to have fun. Have fun with your coworkers, have fun with your students, go to the pep rallies, go to, like, be a grade level advisor, try to do some fun things and serve in your school. Because I know the kids remember the fun that they had.
Yeah.
I look back and I remember the fun I had with particular teachers and coworkers, administrators. We forget about that as educators. We forget about, like, being human and having fun. We're like test scores, curriculum, pacing,
standards.
Yes. Did you turn in your assignments? Where are we going? How did we, like, what did we learn? And like drill, right?
Yeah.
And
I like that.
What I remember and what I know from the great things that end up happening in the classroom is because of the kids having fun. Like, when I that semester made a connection with the kids through some type of fun activity, then it just kind of broke the ice, and we just continued to have fun. And they were willing to, like, work more for me, so yeah, it would be have fun, because I mean, that would be it. And so it's a tough balance. It is a very tough balance, because you don't want to go into the classroom trying to be cool with the kids and have fun, be cool with the players and have fun. Then they're not going to take care of business, and you're not going to be setting them up for their future, right? Mm-hmm. So it takes some takes balance, and it's tough. But I have learned from my teaching career that being a strict teacher and coach is definitely needed, and I would say that, like, that's my favorite, is to be like the coach or the teacher that's like laying down the hammer and just like, hey, shape up. Like, no, we're not doing that. But then, I realized I do have to have balance, and I sometimes forgot to have fun. And I'm just like, oh, at the end of that day or at the end of that tournament, I was like, dang, I was drilling the girl so bad that, like, it was no fun for anybody,
Yeah.
And now I'm a parent, and I observe coaches that coach my daughter and other things. I kind of like look at them and observe, and I'm just like, wow, wow, they just let that go. If that was me, I would, mm-mm. You're on the line running sprints, like you're doing some kind of consequence, or you're on the bench, dude. What kind of mistake was that? Like just total, just terrible, get on the bench, like, but I'm so long-winded at the same time. I'm just laughing at myself too about being so long-winded about this. It's just because, yeah,
I think
these
that
are,
is that's great advice, because as I was listening to you talk about that, I think, yeah, people don't know that those activities, those sports, that doesn't happen without volunteers. Like people
Mhm.
aren't, well, I mean, you get like a little stipend if you're the head coach or the advisor, but I mean, that's not very much compared to how much time you
Yes,
put into, and it's a sacrifice for you and your family, right?
right.
To coach, to be an advisor, to do all of those things. So I like your advice about having fun, because a lot of times I think, especially as a new teacher, you're just so focused on your first year and you're like treading water and trying not to drown. But it's important to get out of your classroom, like you said, and go to a game and just socialize. Let the kids see you outside of the classroom, and even for you to get to see the kids outside the classroom, because maybe a kid who like sleeps in class or doesn't seem like they're ever listening is actually an excellent athlete, or is in other activities and clubs, and that you get to see too. And then you can talk about that in the classroom, and like you said, it helps with building that relationship with your students, and then they'll look at you like, oh, well, they actually care about me, and then
Mhm.
they'll care about what they and how they perform in your class.
Yes, exactly.
I love that. Well, Teisa, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate having you and for you taking the time and all of your insights that you could share. Is there anything else on your mind that you feel like you want to let everybody know?
No, but I do want to thank all of the teachers out there and all of the coaches. It's definitely a calling in life, and you're doing such a great work. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, because I feel like teachers need to be reminded sometimes, because
Yeah.
you have hard days and you're like, what am I doing? And so I think that it's good to remind them. Well, thank you so much for being here, Teisa. And for all of you watching, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below, click the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And as always, remember, you've got this.